Shani, at this particular moment in time, what options are there available for Caster Semenya?
Okay, so the important thing to remember about the decision to reverse their original decision to suspend the regulations is that it's just an interim decision at this point. There's no final decision that has been made. They haven't gone through to the actual appeal procedure yet.
Well, if it's an actual interim decision, does that prevent her from actually competing come September?
Yes, it does.
And when that is said, how then do you start appealing so that it actually makes it in time for her to compete at that level in September?
So that would depend on the appeal process for the Swiss Federal Court. The sooner they get through the appeal, the sooner she would be allowed to compete again. But I am unsure where they are at this stage, as I'm not part of that process.
When it comes to this kind of situation, not only the human rights issue, but it's also an issue around the person's ability to compete at the level that they desire. So what does this mean then for the sportsman at the helm?
This is a very complicated issue, and the biggest problem that I have with what the IAAF is trying to do is that they are taking a natural advantage that an athlete has, and they can't even prove that it's a natural advantage at this stage, but they're using it as a basis to discriminate against someone and telling them that they should not be running at the level that they are running. And I find that extremely contradictory to what sport and the idea of what sport should be is. And I can't understand why we feel the need to regulate this in this manner if there are countless other natural advantages which we turn a blind eye to and sometimes celebrate.
Could there be an issue around here of regulating the way human behavior actually functions? In other words, not taking into consideration the fact that we're all unique human beings with our own individual abilities, and therefore we should not be discriminated against just because, really, in Caster Semenya's case, she's just better than everybody else.
Yes, definitely. I can foresee that if we do lose the appeal, if Caster loses the appeal, I can see that this will become a bigger issue in other sporting organizations. And the problem for me is that we are now trying to determine what you can and cannot do with your own body. How good can you be? And that is the biggest problem that we are facing with this issue.
Charlotte, let me ask you a controversial question. Is this a race issue? Would it happen if the individual who was in question was actually a Western individual?
I do think that this is a race issue, and I don't think that it should be a controversial issue at all. The reason that many of us think that this is very much race-based is not necessarily because it's directly because of the race of the athlete. It's mainly because of the history behind testing like this. Gender verification testing throughout history has been there to prevent and to control African athletes and athletes who are non-Western athletes. So I definitely do think that part of the problem is a racial issue.
Shani, in quite blatant terms, you're saying that it's the need to control black athletes at the expense of white athletes. But we're going to leave our conversation there. Shani Bartlett joining us there from the University of Pretoria, giving us insight in terms of exactly what does it mean for Caster Semenya ahead of that ruling.